starting now. Here we go.
Okay. So, good morning. I want to apologize for the few people that have probably heard this 1,000 times at this point. You're probably tired of hearing me talk about the all hazard plan, but we just want to make sure we give ample opportunity for as many people to be a part of this update process as possible, including our partners and the community. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into the update of where we are right now in the planning process. Just to kind of recap for those that may not have heard about any of this spiel, you're very lucky. I'm pretty sure most of you have. Just to kind of go over what a hazard mitigation plan is. So initially, we're identifying the risks and hazards that affect Kootenai County. So we do a risk assessment. We've done that for the jurisdictions as well as Kootenai County as a whole. From that risk assessment, we then create mitigation strategies to lessen the effects of disaster and help recovery efforts be a little bit faster and cheaper in the long run. And then it is required for certain hazard and mitigation and disaster funding. So the hazard mitigation plan is broken up into two parts, volume 1 and volume 2. Volume 1 kind of identifies the hazard annexes. So the primary hazards that affect Kootenai County that have enough data and content to be able to justify their own annex. And then those that don't necessarily meet that threshold will be a part of the hazards of interest. They'll have a little blurb about how it impacts Kootenai County and maybe some historical things, all that fun stuff. So not substantial enough to have their own annex, but still worthy enough for a mention. And then volume 2 is pretty much based up of the mitigation strategies based off of the risk assessment and the hazards identified. And then it's also broken up into annexes per jurisdiction. So municipalities, different districts, highway districts, school districts, unincorporated Kootenai County, and then our private partners. And so we're working on getting that almost finalized at this moment. Just to kind of review where we were last time, I had this whole spiel at our last LEPC in February talking about the all hazard plan and the risk assessment. We were just in the beginning of that process of gathering data for that risk assessment. We've now gathered it and we've compiled that final hazard analysis, and we're working on a mitigation strategy and working on implementing that into the plan. So we're on a good roll right now. We're on set to finish by our scheduled date. So at this time, we've met with 31-ish jurisdictions several times to go over their annexes and their risk assessments and their mitigation strategies. It's been a fun time. Everybody has been really mostly good about getting us their content and working with us. And so we're really appreciative. It's been a tedious process, but we're developing those mitigation strategies. We're hoping to have volume 2 drafted and ready for each jurisdiction to review by earliest July, if I'm really efficient. We're also planning to schedule a community public meeting towards the end of July. We're planning to have it here because, kind of like you guys were saying, it's a good centralized facility. So that way everybody has a chance from the community to come and review the plan. This will be an after hours meeting. So we're trying to make this as available to the public as possible. From there, we're trying to finalize volume 2 and get everything tidied up. By that point, I should be most of the way through volume 1. Again, those hazard annexes, we're updating it and making sure all the content is updated and accurate. We're going to send the whole plan to, we're going to post the whole plan publicly for our stakeholders, our partners, the community members to review and have a comment period to where they can look over the plan and give us any feedback that they deem necessary. Hopefully by the end of August, early September, everything will look pretty and we can send it with a bow to the state and FEMA for approval. So fingers crossed for us that we meet our timeline. So far, so good. Just some kind of interesting information. Back in 2020, the risk assessment showed the top 5 hazards for Kootenai County were wildfire, winter weather, flooding, windstorm, earthquake. Some of those kind of make sense. Some of those are kind of like, why? So in 2025, the updated top 5 hazards threat to Kootenai County were wildfire, windstorm, winter weather, cybersecurity, and utility failure. So it's kind of interesting to see that transition in just 5 years. We also did a risk assessment for each of those jurisdictions, so the districts and municipalities, and we took those averages and compared it to the average risk assessment for Kootenai County as a whole, just to kind of see if everybody was on the same page. And thankfully, we all kind of are. So it was really interesting to kind of put it into perspective. The same top 3 hazards that each jurisdiction felt were a threat were pretty much equal to Kootenai County, which would be wildfires, windstorms, and winter storms. And then similarly on the bottom, the lowest three threats were active shooter, active threat, flood, and landslide. So just kind of interesting to put
I think it's interesting to point out here too, like, we obviously have a frequency of floods, but I think the reason why it's ranked lower is because we've done so much mitigation activity surrounding floods. So the impacts of them aren't as costly as they used to be. So I think that's why we've seen that flop of floods not being the top of the hazards of concern, but still obviously impacting Kootenai County.
I think that shows the value of what the work that you've been doing.
Right.
If you could capture that monetarily, I guarantee you that would be an impact on your
Yeah.
county commissioners.
For sure. We also just wanted to show the work we've done to show you a draft of a jurisdictional annex as well as a hazard annex. So we're just gonna kind of go through our first jurisdictional annex to show you what's been, what to expect now. So we've tried to simplify it and make it a little bit easier to digest and tone down some of the redundancies. So we have added a hazard summary chart at the beginning just to show what the top 5 hazards for that jurisdiction are. And then there's a more in-depth risk ranking towards the end of the annex, but that just kind of gives you a little snippet. There's also a brief jurisdiction summary. Instead of having this on a paragraph, we just decided to put that important bits of information right up in the front. We can go through the overview still.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what's the risk value? What does that mean that?
Like the amount of
Property.
critical infrastructure property, things that are monetarily valued worth a risk if in case of
Within that jurisdiction service territories.
So not for the organization, but for the
for their
territory
service
itself.
territory, yes,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
So the population and service area, it all equates to how much that risk value is.
Okay.
And if you're having that question, it might be worth, I might put a little justification into the overview as
Yeah.
to like what that means.
Cause then we'll also have that, like for the volume 1, it'll show the risk value for the Kootenai County.
I got a quick question. The 44,000 population, is that from census or is that from data that you got from Tyler?
Yeah, anything in
That
here.
needs to be updated.
Okay, yeah, so we have, Sarah's in the process of finalizing these jurisdictional annexes based off of the information each jurisdiction has given us. Then this will be sent back out for a final review by that jurisdiction.
Okay.
But to your point, the information we have in here is only as good as the information we've been provided.
Nothing in here.
I'm the one who writes grants, so I know the
Okay.
numbers. Those are 10-year-old numbers.
Make sure you're CC.
Okay,
I
thank
have to say, it's really funny that a lot of people did come back and were like, that risk assessment is wrong. It's based off of the data you've given me,
Right.
so figure it out.
That's why I was just wondering.
Tango.
No, absolutely.
Garbage in, garbage out.
So there's just the overview, service trends, we go into property and critical infrastructure. Each jurisdiction is a little bit different. I know fire districts have different content versus like municipalities, so it's not gonna be the same across the board. Critical facilities, regulations and plans, this is all stuff in their previous annexes. It's just been updated and modified quite a bit. We've added community challenges, that's a new one, so we've taken feedback from each of those jurisdictions to see what the community challenges they may face, and so we've implemented that as well. Then we get broken down into the hazard risk ranking, so the risk assessment, and it's been put into a very pretty chart. I can't change the colors, so don't come at me. There's probably gonna be a little paragraph as well. We're just, again, still in draft mode. We're trying to finalize everything and see what's actually necessary versus just throwing fluff in to throw it in.
And the methodology for how that came about will be explained in the base plan too. So the overall risk assessment methodology is gonna be clear on the data we gathered and
Right.
how we came to those numbers.
All the justification will be just in one section at the beginning instead of having to repeat it in every annex. So again, trying to eliminate redundancies.
Sarah? I'm
Yes.
sorry, so can you go back to that? So is that for the entire county or is that still just?
That is just for Northern Lakes. So
Just-
each jurisdiction, each of their annexes will have their own specific risk assessment for their jurisdiction.
Okay.
And then in Kootenai County, they'll have their own risk assessment for the county as a whole.
Based off of the counties is really based off of a lot of public input, whereas some of the jurisdictions might have shared this with leadership or people who are more involved. So like how that data was gathered was dependent on how they wanted to get that information.
And it should be based off of the information they've given based off of perceived risk, historical frequency, population exposed, property exposed, and probability.
Yep.
So that all ties into justification for this risk ranking.
Just wondering, have you seen an increase in the risk of invasive species since the quagga mussel thing down south?
Not really. I think maybe there's been a couple of jurisdictions that have ranked it higher, maybe based off of their location or
Waterways within
maybe
their
potentially,
jurisdiction,
but
yeah.
I haven't seen a huge, like, it has not stood out to me.
Snake River.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Quick question on the top. So thunderstorms versus windstorms, is that lightning that comes with thunderstorms? Is that why it's?
Yeah, so we have had houses that have been struck for us as a jurisdiction. We've had some structure fires that started from strikes on the house, not necessarily. And thunderstorms because we're in the WUI, starting wildland fires. So that's where the lightning.
And to that point, it's actually one of the conversations we had. While those are broken out in the risk assessment for the hazard annexes, there's a severe weather systems category. And within the severe weather systems, it captures windstorms, thunderstorms, and winter storms. And heat.
Yeah.
But they were still ranked individually just because some jurisdictions felt that those individual systems had bigger impacts on their jurisdiction.
Any more questions at this point? That's great. It's just curious. And then this you're actually going to see for the first time before anybody's, but it's now the mitigation strategy. Stop it. So now that we've received mitigation items and action items from all these jurisdictions, I'm now starting to implement them into the actual strategy. So we take previous initiatives and we see if they want to keep those in the plan, update, remove them, or if they've been completed, as well as a little justification. And then the current mitigation items. So a little background on them, what objectives they refer to, what hazard it applies to, who is the lead agency, what the estimated cost is, and funding source and timeline. And then that all gets broken out into a priority schedule as well. Formatting is a little funky. I've noticed some of them, it's not the best because when I transferred it over to the flash drive, it was not happy. So that's what we have for the jurisdictional annexes at this moment. It's probably not 100% yet because we're still tweaking some things, but any questions on the jurisdiction annexes before I move to the hazard annex?
And again, just to give out a shout out to Sarah. Previously, I know we've told you guys we've used contractors. She is formatting every single page of this plan by herself. And I think she's done a pretty phenomenal job. So
I want you to know I'm not slacking. The content and how much I can maybe do 2 annexes in a day if I have all the time dedicated to like,
Wow.
and there's 30 something of them. So
It looks super professional.
thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
And that's
paid a lot of
honestly-
money for that.
yeah, this would have cost us $140,000 if we got a contractor.
I
So
have that.
So now with the savings of $140,000 plus $3,000 a month,
we're rolling in the dough.
Oh, seriously, Sarah, this looks really, really good. Well, very well formatted.
Tiffany makes it really easy to be able to put the content together. She does all of the data research and she's been going crazy trying to find all the data sets for like charts and like the background of everything. It's crazy. It's really fun. It's been really fun.
We're a
too.
good team, but it's nice to like look at the plan and understand it. Whereas before, like I would look at a plan and I'd be like, why the heck is this
It's
in here?
so dense.
What value does this give me? Why am I explaining the same thing 800 different times in the plan, but just like switching words around? And so we've really tried to be thoughtful. It has cost us some sanity in the process, but
Didn't have much left. Well, and we're also realizing people nowadays, they don't have really in-depth attention spans. So the more snapshots we can give of things in the time of like TikTok and Instagram where you have 10-second reels, we can just give little snapshots of information and that's all they need to look at. If they want to get more in-depth information, they can look at it. But the more important information we can give at like a quick little chart or image, the more people are likely to actually look at this.
and at the end of the day, it's about what's actionable in the plan. So understanding the risk assessment is extremely important because that drives all the mitigation action items. And then having those mitigation action items be able to stand on their own. If you just wanted to know, as a jurisdiction, these are what we need to work on or focus or budget for, you can pull that information out and utilize it in an actionable way. So
yes.
we're a little bit.
Daunting task and a good job because just for my annex to get the information back that I needed that I'm holding you guys up on takes a long time. And it's not that involved for me to fill out the annex, but just to get that information that I need that I don't have.
Yeah.
Takes a long time, so I can't imagine doing that for over 30 different.
Well,
groups.
thank you.
So,
We appreciate it.
Yeah, that's
We try to make it as simple
Impressive.
as possible, everybody, because we all know, not to say it this way, but this really isn't important to a lot of jurisdictions. You guys have your full-time jobs where other things do take priority. This is important to me, so the easier I can make it for you to give me that information, We try. So thank you for that.
And when we do this again in 5 years, our system and process is in place, so it's gonna take us a lot less time.
We know what we're doing now.
I think you guys actually know the plan much better.
Oh yeah, that's.
And
By
if we
creating-
did that with the EOP process, we did the EOP internally, the emergency operations plan. I was like, wow, I actually now understand how we can leverage this plan to train and exercise. And with all hazards plan, we feel very similar with it and probably a little nerdy, but I think at the end of the day, we should know the plan more intricately than anybody else, but we also want to encourage the jurisdictions to understand the value this plan brings to them and why they need to give us information and data that's actually meaningful. Cause sometimes we look at them and we're like, this is not information that helps in any way, shape or form, but
I used to be so scared when people would ask me questions about the plans.
yeah.
So now you do though.
Now I
You
do.
answer those questions.
Now people want me to. stop talking
Progress,
about
guys.
that.
I do have a quick question though. Obviously, this is more of a Kevin question to ask, but when it comes down to it, are you using the same format that from a FEMA standardized
So
template?
there's a crosswalk. There's the literal checklist that we have to make sure it's a criteria. So we have to be able to justify certain bits of information and show where they are in the plan. It's not necessarily the layout, but just making sure that there's certain aspects of the plan that meets FEMA's requirements.
Like the risk assessment methodology has to be explained.
We have to show like priority of mitigation strategies, and there's so many weird requirements that we have to meet, but so we do have to like follow their little.
Are you sharing this with the other emergency managers and within our jurisdiction, the 5 northern Idaho counties?
No.
When you mean sharing all of this information and what we have truly found out about this process, which is the frustrating aspect, but also kind of liberating at the same time. Anything needed for these plans is open source information. There is nothing hidden about it. It takes some digging to figure out what data is actually useful, how to access it, where to integrate it, but it's all open source. So if you want to hear Tiffany's soapbox, when it comes to plans and contracting plans, the contractor is relying on your laziness to a certain degree because it is all doable, but it's also capacity. We have committed a year to this, right? So having the staff to do that makes a big difference too. If it was just me, the formatting alone would be something to where I would have to seek additional help. So her skill set has definitely helped with that. But everything for these plans is all open source. It all exists in one shape or another. The hard part is like taking all of the pieces and like putting it together. So we did meet with the state. We have met with FEMA to try to figure out, okay, how do we push this ball forward? And what we learned from that is how do you eat a pie one bite at a time, right? So that's what we've kind of had to step back sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, but then just be like, okay, once we get this piece together, the dominoes kind of fall a little bit. But
it's daunting at first, but yeah, once you just do annex by annex and like dissect it,
But my advice to any EM would just be start to try to understand the plan instead of just have the plan.
You know, like Jim and Dan are doing theirs, and for the first time, obviously they have been contracting or that just hadn't done it. So obviously, I was just sort of curious if they're following the same template that you're using, and if it's going to be standardized across the 5 counties.
Well, and that's the tricky part. So there's not necessarily a template, there's the rubric. So however you format your plan is however you decide to do it ultimately. You just have to ensure that you can call out this aspect listed on this page. So that's what's taken us a lot of time is like, how do we want to format this? Which way do we want this to look?
just making sure it is like in compliance.
Yeah, but like I said, so now next time we do this in 5 years, we'll do the annual updates, but next time we do the overhaul, we're not gonna be reformatting the plan. The plan's formatted. We're just gonna be going back to the data and updating it to reflect the changes that's been occurred. So
Outstanding job, either way.
thank you, appreciate it.
I'll run through this because I know I only have 15 minutes left. I don't want to keep you guys here too much longer, but the flood annex, that was the first one we finished. Oh, like run for a loop now. So we started off with the hazard risk summary. So again, it's kind of broken down into how it actually is a risk to Kootenai County, and this is Kootenai County as a whole now. It shows the total hazard score based out of 25. So we gave a weight of 5 score to like perceived risk, historical occurrence, probability of occurrence, property exposed, population exposed. This was all explained in the risk assessment, like surveys and information we gathered, and it'll also be explained in the base plan, kind of like Tiffany was talking about, the justification as to how we receive this data and how we are determining the risk level. So technically has a hazard score in Kootenai County of 12 out of 25, so think that as you will of it not being like a super huge risk. Rolling down to the National Risk Index, so this is from FEMA's National Risk Index website. This shows how it compares nationally. And what the expected annual loss is for Kootenai County, what the risk factor is, risk value, and that score. Again, that will also be explained in the base plan of what that actually means. And so don't ask me how I got that data. That was from FEMA, so you can talk to the federal government.
Well, you can't.
No, you can't exactly.
Everybody.
That's the
Yeah.
person who knew probably.
They don't
is no
answer the
longer
phone.
So I'll give a little bit of background, warning time. We have a little snippet of like a flood gauge from in the Cataldo area of like how a standard flood looks, what like action stage is, just to kind of give some background on what flood season kind of looks like. Flooding sources, we have the different sources of flooding and their flood elevation levels in Kootenai County. Release, what is that, discharges, peak discharges, and then we have historical flood events. We're probably going to be adding the one from Eastside Highway District too. We just haven't updated it since then. Impacts, so just any relevant information. A lot of this was in the previous annex. We just cleaned it up a little bit. The flood map, so the 100-year and 500-year flood map, I think it is. Yeah. And so it's small, but we can make a bigger map if need be. And then this was really cool. This is what I'm excited about.
This is the prettiest thing.
This is the prettiest thing. So we're gonna have these in each of the hazard annexes, and so it's gonna be an impact summary chart. So it's gonna start off with what cascading impacts could occur from that initial hazard. So here we have like landslide, hazardous materials, dam levee failure, and then utility infrastructure failure. We then have the population development. So how many people are impacted, the area affected, and any critical facilities that are impacted, and then it gets broken up into critical infrastructure and the community lifelines, which we're trying to implement into everything because FEMA now has these community lifelines, which are pretty much the groups of broken up critical assets that make the community function. So like energy, health, medical, water systems, transportation. And so we just kind of break that up into what groups are specifically impacted from the flood hazard. And again, this will be different for every hazard. So
And this is the hardest thing too, because like
Yes.
getting people to give us accurate info on like what critical infrastructure actually is exposed to like a flooding incident becomes a little bit difficult. So like we're trying to make it as like true as possible, but at the same time, it's a little bit tricky because
trying to get the information.
trying to get the info is not easy.
And then this is from FEMA again, it's also part of like the National Risk Index. It just kind of breaks up that earlier chart into more specific data. Fun to look at.
So it looks kind of a little bit lifeline-ish. Are lifelines part of this or not at all?
What do you mean?
You're talking about critical infrastructure exposed.
Well, the icons.
Those
Yeah.
symbols, so I don't know to what degree is there an integration with the lifelines or is there none? Which is fine, but I'm just wondering since I saw the symbols.
So this is pretty much the biggest part of the integration is just showing specifically what lifelines could be impacted based off of that hazard.
What
risk.
critical facilities in Kootenai County are exposed to a flooding incident?
So right here, it shows like there's 6, what specifically those critical infrastructures are, what group they're part of. So one of them is the safety and security, one is energy and fuel, and then 4 are transportation. I think we got that off of the state's data. So
Yeah,
we
so
can
we
look
have
more into
them.
what those specifics are if need be, but just to kind of keep it simply into the community lifelines.
Okay.
So not much more depth than this.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions before we move on? I'm almost done. Cool, okay. Me go. Oh, cool, I've practiced that. So moving forward, I kind of talked about that community meeting we're gonna have, so it's going to be not the finalized part of the plan, but as much kind of like this, but a little bit more in depth to kind of show the public where we're going with this plan, what we've changed, where we've gotten our data from, and just kind of background so they know that they are part of the planning process. They can give some feedback, but really the important time for them to be able to give their feedback and any information towards the plan will be that comment period. So when we are actually finalized with the draft, we can post it out and that'll be time for anybody to be able to come back with any changes they think that needs to happen, any updates, any information they feel is inaccurate, So we're really giving ample opportunity for the community
Yeah.
and partners to participate.
Our goal here is to be as transparent as possible, because for those of you who remember the EOP situation, we do not want that to transpire again. We are really trying to involve the community in every way possible. Sarah's already done a few community events where we've explained what we're doing and we've given them an opportunity to rank the hazards of concern. So we're really, really trying.
And then also moving forward, so just because of schedule conflicts, we will not be having LEPC in July. Our next LEPC will be in August. That'll be the general meeting. Which means by then we should have the draft done and ready for final review for everybody. So you'll get, once again, another presentation on the all hazard plan, but that'll be a little bit more in depth and actually new information, and it won't be as repetitive.
And I'll speak on, Sarah came to two events I've helped out with, when she came to ours, having that board up and having the community engagement, picking and choosing and really thinking about what they're at risk at. It's actually been a really great conversation piece with the community.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
You've seen us out in the wild.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, I've seen it, it's true, I'm not lying. Okay, well, that was my last little spiel for now. Does anybody have any questions?
I'd like to say good job.
Thank you.
Nice done. Nicely done.
Well,
Appreciate it.
that's the end of LEPC. We're 9 minutes short, so. if
Have
there's
a
nothing
wonderful
else,
Wednesday.
Yeah,
Enjoy the
you-
sunshine.
In August, have a good 4th of July, be safe, don't think we're going on.
Yeah.
Unless we have a fire
Yeah, no
before
fires.
then.
Gosh, okay, bye everyone.